The Pokemon series features over 1,000 species, and many of them are absolute beasts in battle. But today, let's check out the opposite end of the spectrum. Good morning, fellas. My name is Elias, and we're gonna look at some of the weakest Pokemon of all time. We'll also try to figure out which one is the absolute worst in battle. Alright, let's get started.
What's up? I'm Matt, and let's start with the Pokemon with the lowest base stat total. Folks, we have already hit a dead end. Wishy-Washy has a base stat total of 175, but only in its solo form. It takes on this form at a quarter of its max health, thanks to its ability Schooling. But until then, its school form has an incredible base stat total of 620. That includes 4 stats that are 140 or higher. Once Wishy-Washy drops below a quarter health though, it's basically dead meat. It becomes a million times weaker and a million times frailer, and has no reliable way to heal back up to school form. Its only recovery options are Rest, which is unreliable, and Leftovers, which don't heal very much at a time. Despite all of that, Wishy-Washy is one of the best Pokemon in Gen 8 PU, the 5th tier of competitive singles. It's got the strongest Scald around, as well as one of the slowest U-turns, so despite having the lowest base stat total in solo form, Wishy-Washy is far from the weakest Pokemon out there.
Looking at Pokemon with low base stat totals is a good start though, so let's continue down that path for a bit, shall we? Sunkern is tied for the second lowest base stat total, clocking in with just 180. Its stats are perfectly balanced, 30 in every stat across the board. Pure Grass isn't a very good defensive typing since it leaves Sunkern with 5 weaknesses. It gets 4 valuable resistances in exchange, but that doesn't mean much when your bulk stats are all 30. Outside of its base stats though, Sunkern is far from the worst Pokemon we're going to talk about today. Its move pool is pretty small, but there's some stuff that's at least decent here. It learns most of the standard grass type attacks, and it also has earth power for ground type coverage. It can also learn Sunny Day, which can activate some really solid abilities.
While the sun is active, Sunkern can either use Chlorophyll to double its speed or Solar Power, which is essentially a Life Orb on steroids. Solar Power boosts your special attack by 50%, but you lose 1/8 of your max health each turn as long as the sun is up. That being said, it's Sunkern. It's the worst Pokemon with these abilities by a long shot. There's a bunch of better Solar Power users, and there's like a zillion better Chlorophyll users. Sunkern still sucks, but it's got a lot of luxuries that other Pokemon don't. Let's keep making our way to the bottom of the barrel, shall we?
If we're gonna find the weakest Pokemon, we've gotta take move pools into account. Beldum evolves into the pseudo-legendary Metagross, but the unevolved form is absolutely atrocious. That was especially the case in Gen 3 when it could only learn one move, Takedown. This move is 90 power, which is decently strong, but the move as a whole is terrible. Not only is it 85% accurate, but the user takes recoil damage if it hits. That means Beldum can't deal damage without hurting itself because Struggle also deals recoil.
You know, it's funny, it feels like I mentioned like some other YouTuber in like every video. JRose11 made a video where he tried to beat Pokemon Emerald with a Beldum, and the final battle against Wallace proved to be an issue. Even at level 100, it's mathematically impossible to win without items, because the recoil damage alone is enough to finish you off. If you threw all of Wallace's full restores in the trash and bribed him to never attack you, you'd still lose. Wallace wins this battle by just existing, because he's got too many bulky Pokemon. Even if you bring a Shell Bell to heal, the odds are still incredibly slim. J-Rose figured out that with the Shell Bell, he still needed like a quadrillion critical hits to win.
Beldum's stats are pretty standard for an unevolved pseudo, but its move pool lets it down immensely. Things got slightly better for Beldum in Gen 4 thanks to some new tutor moves in Platinum and Heart Gold Soul Silver. Starting in Gen 4, Beldum can now learn Headbutt, Iron Head, Zen Headbutt, and Iron Defense. Now it could attack without dealing recoil damage to itself, but its options are still very limited. It can also learn Steel Beam starting in Gen 8, but its coverage is still terrible. It can use Terra Blast to mitigate that issue, but if you're using your once per game Terastallization on a Beldum, you're probably gonna lose. Beldum was a terrible Pokemon in its debut gen, and I mean, it's still Cut that.
No.
Aw. And I mean, it's still terrible now, but Game Freak has thrown in a few bones here and there over the years. It's not the weakest Pokemon of all time, not by a long shot.
This next Pokemon is especially I'm trying to read my lines and Elias is throwing regular show references at me. You're the worst, you know that?
I know. I pride myself on that fact.
This next Pokemon is especially infamous for how weak it is. Magikarp is Kanto's resident joke Pokemon, complete with one of the worst move pools of all time. I made a whole video about how bad it is in battle for some godforsaken reason. In Gen 1, Magikarp could learn a total of 2 moves, Splash, which does nothing, and Tackle, which is just weak. No water type stab, no TMs, no nothing.
In fact, it's impossible for a regular Magikarp to beat Gen 1 on its own. Its only attacking move is Tackle, which is normal type. That means it can't hit the ghost types in Lavender Town, and you can just forget about beating Agatha in the Elite Four. Even if you run out of power points to use Struggle instead, you still don't stand a chance. In Generation 1, Struggle deals normal type damage, so it can't hit ghosts either.
In Gen 2, Magikarp got a new move in Flail. This is a normal type move that deals more damage when the user has low health, maxing out at 200 base power. It's quite a useful move in Magikarp solo runs, and in no other situations in human history ever. Starting in Gen 4, it can learn Bounce, and it also got Hydro Pump via an event in Gen 5. It can also learn the move via TR in Gen 8. Anyway, they're all gone now.
In Gen 9, Magikarp's moveset went back to just 3 moves: Splash, Tackle, and Flail. I'm assuming that's flail and not fail.
Don't worry about it.
Combine that with a base stat total of 200 and an absolutely atrocious distribution, and you've got one of the worst Pokemon of all time. Taylor Swift is a good
You're fired.
Swift Swim is a good ability, but you know, there's a million other fish that get Swift Swim, and all of them are stronger than Magikarp. Just use Barrascuda or something.
Elias is off the channel forever and ever and ever. I'm actually signing his 2 weeks notice with his own hand right now.
I'm free.
Feebas is quite similar to Magikarp, but we can just forget about it. It's got the same base stat total, an equally terrible distribution, and access to Swift Swim. But unlike Magikarp, Feebas can actually learn moves. It's got all your standard water and ice attacks, Rain Dance, Scale Shot, all the near universal TMs, and a bunch of wildcard egg moves. Confuse Ray, Dragon Breath, Hypnosis, Mirror Coat. Sure, why not? Magikarp is completely irredeemable, but Feebas is just regular irredeemable, so this silly little fish isn't in the running for the weakest Pokemon today.
There are several other Pokemon with tiny move pools, but for the sake of this video not being too long, we're not going to talk about all of them in detail. I don't think it'd be that entertaining if we just sat here comparing and contrasting Caterpie and Scatterbug for 25 minutes. Although if you would like a video of us comparing and contrasting Caterpie and Scatterbug for 25 minutes, let us know in the comments below.
How on earth do we fill 25 minutes with that?
Talk really slowly.
Talk really slowly and go over like every detail.
Go over
of
the entire
everything.
Bulbapedia page.
We'll just read the wiki, actually.
We're also skipping over several other Pokemon like Blipbug, Applin, Tynamo, Kricketot, Weedle, Snom, and Wurmple. They have atrocious stats and even worse move pools, but they're not the worst Pokemon in the game. If you would like us to not skip over Blipbug,
Most Pokemon in this video can learn multiple moves, albeit with some caveats here and there, but Unknown can only learn one move, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That one move is Hidden Power. This move's exact details have varied over the years, but the general idea has always been the same. This move can be nearly any type in the game, and which type you get is based on secret stat values. In Gen 2, Hidden Power's type is determined by your DVs, and in Gen 3 onwards, it's determined by your IVs. Up until Gen 6, these stats also dictated how strong the move actually was. It could be anywhere from 30 to 70 power, but in Gen 6, it was changed to always be 60 power. Alright, I'm gonna drop and give you guys 20.
why?
Because I said so.
Hidden Power is a normal type move on paper, but in practice, you already went to the, he's not doing anything. He's not doing anything, he's just standing there. He's doing negative. Hidden Power is a normal type move on paper, but in practice, it can never actually deal normal type damage. It also can't deal fairy type damage, since the formula that determines Hidden Power types wasn't updated in Gen 6. This move is a pretty nice coverage option for some Pokemon. Many fire type Pokemon will run Hidden Power Grass, because grass moves are super effective against ground, rock, and water, the 3 types fire is weak to. In some cases, Hidden Power can also be used as a same type attack bonus move. The options for flying type moves have always been at least a little suspect, with moves like Brave Bird, Acrobatics, and Hurricane all having notable drawbacks. But the choices were even more dire back in the day. Many flying type Pokemon would use Hidden Power as their stab, because Fly is absolutely atrocious against a human with a brain. A functional brain.
Hi Elias, how functional is your brain? Good answer. Hidden Power is a universal TM, meaning nearly every Pokemon in the game can learn it. So Unknown's move pool is outclassed by nearly every other Pokemon in existence, because most of them can learn Hidden Power alongside other stuff. It's a pretty good move, but not so much when it's the only one you can learn. Unknown gets completely shut down by a lot of Pokemon in battle, no matter what type its Hidden Power is. If its Hidden Power is Ghost type, for example, it can't hit normal types at all, unless it uses Struggle. But in the time it takes for you to run out of power points, you're probably just gonna get knocked out. To make things even worse, Hidden Power isn't available in Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet. That effectively locked Unknown out of those games.
Unknown stats are terrible as well.
But Elias had a joke that was even worse that I told him not to do.
It's got 72 attack and special attack, which is just not strong enough to do significant damage, especially with a low power move like Hidden Power, which is strange considering the name of the move is Hidden Power. But
it has no power.
Then every other stat is 48 for a grand total of 336. That base stat total is lower than many unevolved Pokemon like Pawniard and Staryu. But there are a few Pokemon that we think are even worse, so let's give them a look.
Our next candidate is a victim of two things: being introduced too early and the rules of competitive metagames. Wobbuffet was added in Gen 2, and it can't deal damage unless you attack it first. Its only moves that can knock you out are Counter, Mirror Coat, and Destiny Bond, and all of those moves only work if you get hit.
But your opponent doesn't have to hit you. If you just switch between two Pokemon for a zillion turns in a row, Wobbuffet is completely powerless to stop you. With no standard attacking moves, Wobbuffet will just sit there doing nothing except running out of power points. Once it gains access to Struggle, well, it's still screwed. Its attack stat is atrocious, and Struggle is only 50 base power, so it's not winning any battles that way either. Bringing a Wobbuffet to a battle is practically an auto-lose button in Gen 2.
I mean, I guess if your opponent also brings a Wobbuffet, it's not an auto-lose, but you both should turn off your games in that case, I think.
Yeah, you just sit there each like spamming moves.
In Gen 3, abilities were added to the series, and Wobbuffet got one of the best ones. Shadow Tag is great on its own, but it also eliminates Wobbuffet's biggest Achilles heel. It traps your opponent, meaning they can't switch. That change alone made Wobbuffet 150 kajillion times more threatening, and it was no longer just dead meat the millisecond you put it on your team. By removing the option to switch, your opponent will have to attack you at some point, and you can mollywop them with Counter and Mirror Coat, which deal double the damage Wobbuffet took. Wobbuffet's HP stat is really high, so it can potentially knock out multiple Pokemon that way.
But Wobbuffet is still worthless in most singles metagames, because Shadow Tag is banned in most tiers. Trapping abilities are incredibly powerful on Pokemon that are actually competent, so Arena Trap and Shadow Tag are typically banned across the board in singles. With no way to prevent opponents from switching, Wobbuffet was right back to square one. Once again, its opponents are free to switch all they want, forcing our guy to waste 32 years before struggling itself to death. It has to use its other ability, Telepathy, which does nothing in singles battles. In single battles.
It's fine.
Shut up, it's not okay. Which does nothing in single battles.
I'm gonna use the first take.
Damn.
I don't think it's fair to say Wobbuffet is one of the worst Pokemon of all time. Sure, it's completely unusable in most singles metagames, but that's because of the rules that are typically in place. Wobbuffet would be more of a threat if Shadow Tag was allowed, which is why it's actually in Ubers in Gen 3. You know, the tier mostly full of legendaries. Wobbuffet was equally unusable in Gen 2, but that's ancient history at this point. Plus, the game's AI doesn't know how to deal with Wobbuffet, so it's not completely dead weight in a playthrough.
Wobbuffet's pre-evolution, why not, is
That's what it's called, I don't know what to tell you.
Wobbuffet's pre-evolution, why not, is doomed to the same fate as well. It's also usually forced to use Telepathy in singles because Shadow Tag is typically banned, but the baby form wasn't introduced until Gen 3. Why Not was never stuck without an ability, unlike its Uncle Wobbuffet in Gen 2. So that's why we're focusing on the full evolution for this section. Wobbuffet was unusable because of the game's actual mechanics back then, but Why Not is unusable solely because of the rules many people like to play with. But neither of these guys are the absolute worst, especially if Shadow Tag is allowed.
So we've talked about some absolutely abysmal Pokemon today, but I think this one takes the cake. You know how Wobbuffet can't deal damage unless it gets hit first? Well, Cosmog can't deal damage, and that's the end of the sentence. Yup, our pick for the weakest Pokemon is Cosmog. This little fella only gets two moves: Splash, which does nothing, and Teleport, which also does nothing outside of wild battles, at least when Cosmog was added in Sun and Moon.
Is Cosmog technically a Pokemon, or is it an Ultra Beast?
Ultra Beasts are Pokemon.
Nope.
Then why are the Ultra Beasts in the Pokedex? Ultra Beasts are extra-dimensional Pokemon.
Damn it!
Nowadays, Teleport is actually a really good move. It switches the user out with -6 priority, which allows you to get other Pokemon into battle more safely in some cases. But you know, ideally your Teleport user can do other things. The only way for Cosmog to deal damage at all is with Struggle, making it the only Pokemon that can't hurt you without running out of power points. Every other Pokemon can learn at least one physical or special move. In any case, Struggle's not doing Cosmog any favors anyway. Its attack stat is 29, which is pathetic. Oh yeah, this is unrelated, but it's something I find fun. Cosmog and its evolution share a pretty neat property with the Ultra Beasts, which are Pokemon, Elias. Why would they be in the Pokedex if they're not Pokemon?
I have no rebuttal.
Where was I? All of their base stats are prime numbers across the board, with one exception. I actually don't know how to pronounce this one. Apparently this is how it's pronounced, but Naganaddle's base speed stat is 121, which is a prime power, 11 squared. Aside from level 1, they also only learn moves at prime number levels. Sorry, I'm a math major, I love this kind of stuff.
Cosmog is especially awful because of the Struggle nerf, which Wobbuffet caused back in Gen 4. Check out this video to find out how. In the first 3 generations, the recoil damage from Struggle was noticeable, but not a death sentence. But now that it always deals a quarter of your max health in recoil, it's absolutely catastrophic. That means that even if by some miracle you run out of power points, Cosmog is still almost completely useless because it can only use Struggle up to 5 times before it faints. Even then, you only get 5 turns if your opponent doesn't hit you, and your HP isn't a multiple of 4. In practice, you'll usually get 0.
Cosmog's base stat total is 200, which is atrocious, but not the worst in this video. Unlike Cosmog though, most Pokemon we've seen can at least learn 1 or 2 strong moves. Magikarp used to have Hydro Pump and Bounce, Beldum has all the head moves it could ever want, and Wobbuffet's counterattacks are deadly when it can use Shadow Tag. And then Cosmog has Jack Squat. Its level up moveset is barren and is completely incompatible with TMs.
But you know what? There is a universe where Cosmog can deal damage without struggle. It's not the video game universe, but hey, it's something. Nebby used Supersonic in 1 episode of the anime. Okay. This move doesn't deal direct damage in the games either.
For reasons that neither of us can explain, the name Nebby is the funniest thing Elias has ever heard. Please hold while he composes himself and tries not to die of laughter. I'm gonna make you laugh. A full 5 minutes later.
This move doesn't deal direct damage in the games either, but it confuses the target. So if you get lucky, your opponent will hit themselves 32 times in a row and knock themselves out. Of course, you've got to deal with the move's abysmal accuracy, but I mean, it's better than splashing around for 64 turns. But Cosmog can't learn Supersonic in the games. Too bad. We should probably make another video about illegal moves though.
Its ability Unaware is a great defensive tool. You know, as long as the Pokemon using it actually has stats. 43 HP and 31 defenses just ain't getting the job done. Cosmog will roll over and die against pretty much any hit you throw at it. Heck, it might faint if it comes out of its Pokeball a little funny. Despite all of that, Cosmog has been banned in many VGC formats on account of being a legendary Pokemon. Since it evolved into Solgaleo and Lunala, Cosmog has virtually always been banned or restricted in VGC. Check out this video for more info about weak Pokemon that got banned. It's one of my personal favorite videos on the channel.
Our pick for the second weakest Pokemon is Cosmog's evolution Cosmoem. Sure, it's got much better defensive stats plus a new move, but that move is Cosmic Power, which just boosts your defense even further.
Defenses.
Good enough, I
Defenses.
don't care. Cosmoem still can't deal damage. If you're not able to attack, you're not going to make any progress in the battle.
Hey, can you speak into the mic real quick?
No. Somebody once told me if I had to explain a joke, it means it was really funny.
Elias is really bad at YouTube. He's fired.
That's the second time today.
Say that line right or you're fired!
I can't do it.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Why can't they stop laughing? Okay. Oh god. Okay, just think about dead puppies. The dead puppies aren't helping. I'm crying. And that's all we got for today. Leave a comment if you want to see us compare and contrast Caterpie and Scatterbug for 25 minutes. We'll see you all next time. Good night, fellas. Sleep well. When did you add that?
That was always in the script, man.
Oh my god. You mean
I didn't want to say anything.
You mean I predicted it?
Yeah.